Curtis, if the Beverly Hillbillies is correct, you, I believe, will have won more on a game show than anybody in the history of game shows.
I'd like that.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Schneider, and 25 years ago today, Fox premiered Greed, one of my all-time favorite game shows. It was the network's response to the wild success of ABC's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, another one of my all-time favorite game shows. But Fox wanted to do far more than just respond to the million-dollar game show craze that Millionaire had started. They wanted to double down on it, and that's exactly what they did. Greed wouldn't just offer a $1 million prize, it would offer a $2 million prize. If you followed this series from the beginning, you'll know that winning $1 million on a game show is hard enough. So as you can imagine, winning $2 million was going to take exceptional general knowledge, grit, determination, nerves of steel, courage, bravery, and yeah, a little bit of luck probably wouldn't hurt either. So today, in episode 7, it's time for yet another twist on this series. Let's take a look at why winning $2 million, or even $1 million, on Greed is almost impossible. I usually like to begin opening these episodes with a brief rundown of how the show works in case viewers have never seen it before or are just unfamiliar with it in any way. But if you followed this channel for a while, you know I love this show, and turns out I've already done that. Not to mention the fact that I keep getting comments from you guys telling me that these videos are too long, and guys, I don't know what you want here. I'm fine with constructive criticism, in fact I frequently deserve it, but what's the issue here with the runtime? You know what you're getting into. It's right there. The runtime is visible right on... okay. Sorry. Where was I? Oh, yes. Greed's rules certainly weren't impossible to understand, but they were complex. So instead of upping this video's runtime even more by rehashing all of that here, it does admittedly just make more sense to redirect you all to the video I made a few years ago. Also, if you're looking for a comprehensive breakdown of the one team that did feature a contestant who made it all the way to the $2 million question, there's already a video about that too, so you're in luck. So with that said, for the purposes of this video, I simply want to take a good look at the rules that are absolutely necessary to explain why this show's top prize is nearly impossible to win. Greed may be one of my all-time favorite game shows, but I'm not afraid to acknowledge that it is heavily and fundamentally flawed. And one of the biggest problems I had with the show's higher value questions is just how wide the range of difficulty was for a lot of them. Some of them were based in objective fact, well, of course, they all were to a degree, but they were based on what could easily be seen as general knowledge for an expert in that subject. Others felt like more survey-based questions. What are the 4 most popular items here? What are the 4 bestsellers over there? What are the 4 most common items left behind here? And some of them straight up were surveys. Whom did Americans name as their 4 favorite authors? I mean, I trust that you were honest about your polling results, but I mean, come on, I thought we were trying to mimic Millionaire here, not Family Feud. Regardless, those kinds of questions are undoubtedly tougher than finding 4 Oscar winners, or 4 celebrities who have something else in common, or figuring out when 4 historic events occurred. If your team was fortunate enough to get one of those questions, you probably stood a better chance of advancing up the Tower of Greed than the teams that saw the most popular kinds of questions. Speaking of the teams, the show is called Greed for a reason. It's what the game fundamentally requires for a contestant to maximize their personal share of the winnings. Teammates turn on one another. When you get to the $200,000 question, you run into the Terminator. And with $10,000 guaranteed to the challenger win or lose, on a show that otherwise has no guarantees or safety nets, it should be no surprise that most contestants took that offer when afforded the opportunity. And from there, it's basic mathematics. When you're trying to get 4 correct answers out of 6, you may very well only have 4 contestants remaining. When you're trying to get 4 out of 7, you may be down to 3. As the number of wrong answers standing in a team's way increases, and as the difficulty therefore increases, the number of teammates able to work together to find these answers actually decreases. Now, you might point out that there were exceptions to this rule.
Terminator has chosen you again, Melissa. It's chosen you again.
Do it again. I can't do it again. I can't go through that again. No.
You have $20,000 no matter what happened.
No, I'm fine. I'm happy with the food category. I can't do that to myself again.
Okay.
Somebody else is going to do it to me. I don't want to do it to myself.
And there certainly were. One of the more notable ones was a team from That 70s Creed special that kept their team together all the way through the $500,000 question and ended up taking home $100,000 each.
You know, Chuck, if this was a regular version of Greed, I'd probably do it. But because everybody here knows something about the 70s, I think we got a good team. I'm just going to keep it the way it is for now.
That's your prerogative. Pass up that $10,000. Anybody here?
You know
wanna
what?
call out?
I'm going to go with Mike's feeling of team, and I'm not going. We're going to keep this team together. I think we're good.
All right. Yes. You got $500,000.
And hey, good on them. That's a nice strategy that happened to work out well for them. But let's say that in theory, you want to take that strategy all the way to the top of the Tower of Greed. $2 million divided by 5 leaves everyone with just $400,000. So even if we had seen a team brave enough to keep going at that level with multiple contestants still around, there's still no guarantee that one single contestant breaks into the 7-figure range here. Just think of Dan, Curtis, and Melissa's team. They actually won $1 million, but it was split 3 ways. And even if all 3 had chosen to play on, Curtis and Melissa only had 2 shares of the prize and would have been playing for $880,000 individually, while Dan would have only played for $440,000. Of course, Curtis and Melissa happily left with their $400,000, well, $410 when you factor in the Terminator bonus, so we got to see Dan play for the $2.2 million jackpot by himself. And would you believe that Dan only got 30 seconds to break down a 9-part question with 4 correct answers?
You have 30 seconds to think of your answers. And start now.
30 seconds! That's it! Even in Millionaire's Clock format era, the $1 million question let contestants use whatever time they hadn't used on the first 14 questions, so they'd still have at least a few minutes to break down a question with 1 correct answer out of 4. But on Greed, good luck, Dan. 30 seconds to find 4 correct answers out of 9. And oh, by the way, you can't change any of them either like you did during the main game. That feature's gone too.
Okay, those are your 4 choices. Does he get a chance to change anything? Okay, you don't have a chance. You're captain, but all those things are gone.
I know.
I don't even know where this time limit came from. As if it weren't hard enough to get to this point. None of the other first 7 questions had any sort of time limit. Why are we introducing one here? Hey, it's me, Ben, editing this, trying to come up with the best way to illustrate how important not having a time limit was during the main game, and we can point to Dan's own episode here. Just take a look at how long he sits on this 4th answer here, deciding to change his own answer from the time Curtis locks in Janis Joplin to when Dan locks in Buddy Holly. Just take a look at how much time elapses on the clock here.
Janis Joplin. All right, you're still Captain Daniel. There's $1 million at stake. Is there any answer that you would like to change? Only one, and I'll accept that one change.
I was been thinking about my answer.
What was your answer?
Valentino. I'm going to go with. I'm going to change my answer. I'm going to change my own answer.
What are you going to change it to, Daniel?
Hopefully the right one.
Very quiet in the audience, please.
Buddy Holly.
Changing it to Buddy Holly.
So there you go, 52 seconds and change just to change one of the 4 answers that has already been given when it's 4 out of 8. But when it's 4 out of 9, you only get 30 seconds, you don't get to change any of them. It just makes it so incredibly difficult, and as I'll explain coming up here, we really have to appreciate Dan's bravery because they made this really, really challenging for him. It really is remarkable to look back on Dan's run when you think about just how much he had the deck stacked against him. As host Chuck Woolery said, it took a tremendous amount of courage on his part for him to go for it here. And this was only in the show's 3rd week. Dan didn't have anyone else's experience to work with here to come up with any sort of strategy or blueprint. This was just him. Giving up $200,000 to go for the top prize, knowing he'd walk away with nothing if he came up short, is something that most contestants probably wouldn't be comfortable doing. And I think that's ultimately the biggest reason why this show's top prize was almost impossible to win. There was no safety net. Unlike Millionaire, which had 2 safe havens on its money tree, Greed was, as the show's tagline advertised, the richest, most dangerous game in America. Every time a team captain was asked if they wanted to keep the cash or play on, the only piece of information they were given was the category of the upcoming question. So, I mean, forget the $2 million question for a second. you'd be lucky to see a team try the $1 million question. If you get to $500,000, chances are either one of the 4 or 2 of the 3 remaining contestants has $200,000 by themselves. And it's easy to see why you wouldn't want to risk that, knowing the penalty for missing a question is walking away with nothing. So to draw things back to my personal thoughts on the show here, if anyone in Los Angeles with the power to do so ever does decide to revive Greed, I'd like to see them incorporate a rule from the Super Greed specials. When Super Greed aired, the prize value of the final 3 questions doubled, meaning that getting through question 6 won that team $1 million rather than $500,000. And it was at this point that Super Greed did something regular Greed never did: introduce a safety net. If a team won $1 million, they'd be guaranteed their share of a $200,000 prize, regardless of what else happened the rest of the game.
Take a moment and think about that $1 million, because things are going to change. Let me tell you how it's going to change, everybody. This is Super Greed. We got a different thing going on here. Because you've won the $1 million, you reached that level, you are now guaranteed $200,000 no matter what happens. So if you go for $2 million and you lose, you're still going to get $200,000.
And this allowed us to see 2 instances where teams were actually confident enough to go for it on question 7. I think if teams had had that $200,000 to fall back on, we certainly would have seen more teams go for the $1 million or perhaps even $2 million on regular episodes. One of these 2 Super Greed teams actually won the $2 million prize. So well done Phyllis Harris, David Giuliano, and Lauren Griswold. But even here, once Phyllis turned down the opportunity to play for $4 million by herself, it became clear we weren't going to get a solo $1 million winner here. David and Lauren's shares, as impressive as they were, only come out to $800,000 each, while Phyllis only walks away with $400,000. So there you have it. Between some questions that bordered on unfair, teammates taking one another out, an inexplicable time limit on the 8th and final question, and the lack of any sort of insurance policy, winning $1 million, let alone $2 million, on Greed is almost impossible. But maybe Syndicated Millionaire's $1 million Tournament of 10 and Deal or No Deal's $1 million mission took more inspiration from Greed than we thought. By the time February of 2000 rolled around, Greed's producers ultimately decided that it was time to see the confetti drop in one way or another. So they brought back previous contestants to try for a special $1 million question, playing under the same rules as Dan's $2.2 million question. And at the end of the day, the only contestant whose Greed winnings total 7 figures is Curtis Warren. His $1 million moment was Greed's only $1 million moment.
Give me the Beverly Hillbillies. Congratulations, buddy. Congratulations.